Good morning. I was asked by an individual last night in Bear Independence Patreon community chat place. I don't mess with Patreon much, so excuse my fumbling for words when it comes to talking about the platform because I don't really use it. But a gentleman last night in conversation had asked me to share my testimony, and I didn't even give him what you would call a Cliff Notes version. Instead, I told him I would make a video. That being said, grab your favorite drink, have a seat, because I've got to take you on a little trip. Because my journey to where I am today started as a child, like much of ours have, except mine was a little bit different. So grab your favorite drink, have a seat, because this is going to be a little bit of a discussion. So it started out when I was a kid. My family wasn't they weren't religious or anything. They didn't go to church all the time or anything like that. And as a child I was genuinely curious. And I had a little red Bible that was given to me as a kid, little zipper bound, and I read it several times as a child. And when I tried to compare that to the things that the churches say, to the way that people act, the two didn't even come close to one another. Not even close. And even as a child, I called it out for what it was. So that's probably why I was largely agnostic for most of my life. I dealt with depression, anxiety, in short, PTSD from a child. That's not necessarily because I had the most horrid parents on the planet. They weren't the best parents, and they were far from the worst parents. We always had food in our bellies, clothes on our backs, and they did, for the most part, their best to keep us in line. But I wasn't a normal kid. I have never been normal. There's a term for kids like me when I was a kid, and I don't want to say it. I don't like saying it. I don't want nothing to do with it. But in reality, I have no choice. There are people, kids, called star children. If you've never heard of one, never heard of that, look it up. Why is this important? Because that's the majority, that was the root of why I was so anxious and so depressed, up to suicidal. I have had multiple attempts in my younger years to take my own life. Every one of them failed. I mean, there were instances where stuff failed that does not make any sense at all. And I would get so mad and so pissed off. And I would start screaming at the God that I wasn't even sure was really there. Why? Why did you do this to me? See, I prefer to be a quiet person. I prefer to be the dude in the corner doing the work without the fanfare or anything like. I prefer to just work and get shit done. That's what I want to do. I am not one that I don't want to lead, although I am constantly put in leadership positions. But the thing that made me the most upset was my intellect. Because I knew things that there is no way on earth I should have known. Because I'd never been taught them. 5 years old, I taped two actually four, but I taped two sets of two D-cell batteries together. Knew that I had to flip the polarity of the batteries. grabbed batteries out of Dad's flashlights and some aluminum foil out of the kitchen and some electrical tape. I taped a piece of foil. Well, I taped the two sets of batteries together, and I taped a piece of foil on one side and taped the contacts to my toy on the other. What it was is, you know about the Power Wheels. They're very popular. Well, this is way back in the day. This was a motorcycle, an electric powered motorcycle for, the little kids. But it used a 6-volt lantern battery. And those things are rather pricey. And my parents bought it at a yard sale. They figured I would just push it around and wouldn't care. Well, they went over to the neighbors. And they were sitting out in the front yard in lawn chairs talking, as neighbors used to do back in the day. And here I come dragging this thing out on the sidewalk and hop on it and take off. Now you tell me how a 5-year-old kid knew how to make that circuit. And then, after I made the circuit and pushed the button, it went backwards. How did I know I had to switch the wires to make it go forward? I couldn't tell. I can't tell you that. I'm 53 years old. I can't tell you how I knew that today. I have no idea. And it would highly frustrate me because I don't want to be special. I don't want to be looked at as special. I don't even want to be known. I just want to be the dude in the corner, keeping my mouth shut, doing my work, doing my job. So it really pissed me off. The other thing that made having a high intellect very hard as a child was because there is a lot of things in society that I didn't and still don't to this day understand. I was held back in the 5th grade. The teacher said that it wasn't because of my grades. I was plenty smart. The words that 5th grade teacher said is he's too immature and the other kids will just run him over. And while she wasn't wholly wrong, she wasn't wholly right either. It wasn't immaturity. It was actually maturity. Because most of the kids wanted to run out to recess, and a bunch of them would group up and pick on this kid or pick on that kid, and I didn't want any part of any of that. It didn't make any sense to me. Why would you just start a problem when there's no problem? That's the stupidest thing in the frickin' world. And I didn't want no part of it on either side. I didn't want to be the picky or the picker. And that made me somehow immature. I've always been very socially awkward because of my intellect. And always will be. Many times, like I said, I got frustrated. Several times I tried taking myself out. But there is something consistent every single time. Because I would get pissed. And I would literally scream at the God I didn't even know existed. And I always got the same answer. When I asked why, I always got the same answer. Because I need you for something very important. Because I need you for something very important. Well, that, as a kid, didn't help me. It just pissed me off a little more, actually. Because now I got more questions, right? I've always got questions. And I pretty much ignored that voice throughout my childhood, teenage years, as an adult. The other thing that I want to bring up before we get to the meat and taters of this, I had a friend in junior high school. To this day, I will say he's the best human being that I've ever known in my entire life. And when I say the best, I'm talking by looking at him from the scales of God. He was absolutely, hands down, the best human being I've ever known. He had tried to get me into religion, if you will, church, God, what have you, many, many, many times, and I rejected it every time. And it didn't help when this man that I think the world of, at 21 years old, at college where he's going to seminary school to become a pastor himself, he wasn't feeling well one day, and after a ton of people told him just to go home, he left the school. He was walking on the sidewalk to his car and collapsed and died from a heart attack. And that really pissed me off. And then later on in life, I had a best friend who was staying over where I was living. We just hung out and partied a little bit. Everything was fine. There was nothing crazy at all. I went to bed, everybody went to bed, and I got woke up in the morning by someone screaming that Brianna's dead. Brianna was my best friend's 6-month-old daughter. And indeed she was. Overnight, she died of sudden infant death syndrome. Nobody did anything wrong. Nobody did nothing. Nobody did anything wrong. How much do you think that one pissed me off? You want to talk about being done. I was done. Now it wasn't so much agnostic. It was anger. And I lived with that for quite a while. And then in 2005, this is the meat and potatoes of the testimony. May seem a little out there. I'm just giving you my testimony. I don't know what else to say but the truth. 2005, woke up in the morning like any other morning. Went to work. I worked at a plastic injection molding plant. And I was standing next to a coworker working. And we were just talking like usual. And he mentioned something about being an ordained minister. I literally got in trouble with my boss because you hear, rolling on the floor laughing my ass off? Yeah, I got in trouble because I was literally on the floor laughing my ass off. Because if you would have knew this guy, you would have laughed just as hard. And I'm like, dude, you got to tell me this. How in the hell did you get ordained? Oh, dude, you just go online, go to, website and whatever. Dude, I couldn't wait to get home. I was so excited to get home. This was going to be a hoot. Because if I can get ordained, anybody can get ordained. That was my mindset. That's actually true. On a legal sense, not so much a biblical one. Because man don't choose who serves the Father in an actual service. Man doesn't get to choose that. The Father chooses that. He's the only one that chooses that. You be ordained all you want. You can have all the piece of papers that you want. It doesn't mean that God ordained you. It just means that man ordained you. I want to make that really clear. I think there's a lot of confusion there. People think that piece of paper means God's approval. And it absolutely does not. So anyway, I went home, got online, filled out the form, and before the night was over, I had an email with my ordination confirmation, and I I joined their Yahoo group. They used to have Yahoo groups. I joined one of their Yahoo groups. I'm not a malicious person. I wasn't going to just go making fun of people, mocking them, attacking them, or anything like that. I just wanted to. I wanted a good laugh. I'm going to be honest. I wanted a good laugh. So when I started reading the conversations in the Yahoo group, my jaw hit the floor. Because those folks were asking the same questions that I had been chastised for asking my entire life. I had been told that we weren't supposed to question this stuff. This is the Word of God. Well, there's a reason why I can't, it's amazing the stuff that I can store in my memory. Like, bring it up like I've got the textbook in front of me. Because literally I kind of do. I can see it in my head. One of the weird ways my brain works. But there is one book that I cannot memorize like that. Want to take any guesses? The Bible. People like Baron Dependent and many, many other people out there can just sit there and rattle off every single verse. And, I mean, it's insane. Hell, it takes me forever just to find the right book in the Bible after I thumb through it 10 times to find the right tab. Right? And I've read the Bible a lot of times at this point. A lot. There's a reason that I can't remember that book. And we'll get to that. So, I did this ordination thing. Didn't think much of it. Thought it was a funny joke on myself. And I, continued with life. And for the next 2 weeks, absolutely every single place I looked, I saw the name Jesus. I mean, everywhere. And it was in the most odd place many times. After about 2 weeks of this, on my way home from work, I was coming through Highland. I was living in a little town called Greenville at the time, but I was coming through Highland, and I'm back behind this big damn semi on this small little street, and I just want to get home, right? It was a Friday, and paid, and I want to get home. I want to do my things. And I'm behind this truck, and I'm hollering, come on, all this stuff, and this truck makes a left-hand turn. What do you think was on the side of the trailer of the semi? As big as they could put the letters on that 53-foot trailer, it said, Jesus. I was pissed. At this point, I was fed the F up. When I got home, I went into the computer room, literally fell on my knees, and my first words to God was, what in the fuck do you want with me? You can quote that. His response is, I want you to learn. I want you to learn who I really am. I want you to know the difference between that book that people call the Bible and the true Word of God. And while much of it does line up, much of it also doesn't. God knows I'm the type of person that won't give up the pursuit for truth. I've got a motivation in me for truth like you have never imagined. All my life, all the intellect, all the trials, all the traumas, the horrors were just preparation for what's to come. God played a trick on me. He's really good at it. He made me come to him without realizing that I was coming to him. Man works in some very mysterious ways. It's weird, I know, but that's how it happened. And I will add a little bit more to it. The question was about my testimony, but I would be robbing you if I didn't continue a little bit. Robbing you of a lot of things. Not only would I not be a very good brother if I didn't tell you about this. So fast forward to 2012 or so-ish. Well, actually, before that. Let's go before that. I think it was around 2006, if I'm not mistaken. And I was fairly freshly married. My appendix exploded at a Blue October concert. That happened on a Friday night. I didn't go into the hospital until Monday. I should not be alive. I had been told by countless medical professionals they have no idea how I survived that. Well, you would think that draws people closer, right? Well, the day I was supposed to report back to work at Walmart, I couldn't because I was still in way too much pain for that. So, it was a fairly crazy recovery. So, one night, I'm in bed because I don't feel good. I've got the, drainage tube with the little bulb thing coming out of my abdomen and all that stuff. And next thing you know, I'm getting woke up. I was taking a nap. I'm getting woke up by a cop. And my so-called wife had pulled the order of protection game, and just you name it. While her husband, me, couldn't even get out of bed by himself. I had to have help to get out. Oh, I was a serious threat then, don't you know? Can't even get myself out of bed. It was a waterbed, I will add that. It's a little harder to get out of waterbeds, especially when you had a nasty appendectomy, you know what I mean? Wasn't even really an appendectomy because the thing exploded. They just had to cut me open and clean literally tons of crap out because it apparently it petrified or something, and when it did explode, it peppered my organs and with material, and so they had to go in and clean all that out and all that when they operated on me. So I shouldn't even be alive from that. But then my wife started playing her game, and after multiple times a year of this happening, my interest started to go towards other women, we'll say. Or I'll say another woman, not just women in general. I had met somebody at Walmart where I worked that knocked me off my feet. And here I am in a marriage to where my wife wanted to play more games than what she wanted to live life. So before it was all said and done with, I wound up in an affair that lasted years. And my wife knew it. She knew about it. I didn't hide it. I didn't even hide it. At the end there, my wife, myself, and our kids lived in my girlfriend's house. That's a fact. It's like, I don't know, 4 blocks away from me. that way. And I became very reckless in life. See, it wasn't the idea so much of two women that pissed God off. It was the sexual deviancy that I was involved with those women, because it involved substances that would enhance the moment. And it's not good. And here I'm supposed to be working for God, and the only thing I'm working for is the little Mike. You know what I mean? So eventually, things spiral as out of control as they will in those situations. And I lost everything. Wasn't so upset about losing the wife. She wasn't much of a wife. But I haven't seen my kids in over 11 years. And in the period right after that happened, my wife played her game one last time, this time down in Alabama, where we had no support network. And I lost everything. I haven't seen my kids since. I lost all my tools. I lost all my possessions. When I left Alabama, I had to come back to Illinois on a Greyhound bus. I had a medium-sized military Alice pack, a standard-sized duffel bag, and a computer tower, the one that Jen uses over there. That's it. Out of a lifetime of stuff, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars in tools. There was at least 20 grand in tools there, at least. I lost everything. And so what did I do? For whatever reason, picked up that Bible. And I started reading hard and talking hard to God. Not man. I didn't want man. There was a reason God didn't want me to be able to memorize the scripture in the Bible. There is a reason why he didn't want any of those sort of things out of me. Because he needed me to listen to him. He needed me to hear him, not man. And that's why you'll see why I kind of have a little bit of a weird attitude when it comes to people trying to explain what God means to me. Because not only is it their job, not their job, but they're not supposed to be doing that. You're not supposed to sit there and try to explain the intricate details of Scripture with man. You are to send them to God. It's the command that they are to seek him, not you. They are to seek him. Where in the Bible does it say that man is to seek man for godly things? Nowhere, because that's silliness. If you start with imperfection, you're going to get imperfection. Silliness. So, I spent a lot of time with God. And I still do. Each and every day. When I say God says, I don't mean I read it out of a book. When I say God says, it's because he said it to me. Likely because I asked a question or a billion. Sometimes just for the hell of it. There are many times he gives me information, answers questions I didn't ask, just out of nowhere, seemingly. I mean, his plan is much wiser than mine, so I say seemingly because obviously it's not a useless event. I just don't understand the importance of my part in it. That doesn't mean anything. Just because I don't understand it doesn't mean anything. Not my job to understand everything. That's God's job. My job is to listen to God. You know, like a private, or what do they call them in boot camp? A cadet, whatever. You know how they take orders from their commanding officer, and they're taught not to question it, just do it. Well, I won't advise you to do that with the Bible, but if God tells you something directly, I highly advise you do it. Because I'm living the life of what happens if you renege on your deal with God. I don't blame him. It wasn't his fault. It was my fault. It was all me. 100%. Pick up the Bible. Read it. Talk. And ask questions to God. If he doesn't answer them, maybe you're not ready yet. I couldn't tell you the length of the list of questions I've had that hadn't been answered yet. And I'm good with that. If it's for me to know, he'll let me know when it's time. And I'm good with that. Why? Because I trust him. Why do I trust him so much? This is the last part of the testimony. After that all happened, I stayed with a friend of mine for a while. He was the deacon of a church. And obviously, we would go to church every week. And there's a cross at the front of the church. Sorry, it is what it is. And after the sermon, this church did things like it's supposed to be done. As in, you had church, and then after you got done having church, everybody was invited downstairs in the basement for a meal so everybody could break bread together and socialize. They did it the right way, unlike 99.99999% of churches. They did it the right way. And so the end of the sermon came, and the pastor walked right up to my pew, looked me in the eyes, and said something to the effect of, "I think you have an appointment with someone." "Pastor, I think you have an appointment with someone." I grabbed my Bible, walked up to the front, kneeled at that cross, and lost myself. Everything was laid out that night. Everything. There wasn't a thing that was missed. I was down there for a while. I didn't know it. It felt like a matter of a couple of minutes to me, but I was down there for a while, sobbing heavier than what many people describe they've ever seen anyone sob. You know who the happiest person in that room was that night? The pastor. Because he walked up to my buddy and he said, "He's here. He's here." He said, "I haven't seen God in this building for a while. He's here. He's right down there with your friend." And he wasn't joking. I was worried to death for my kids because my wife is a shitty human being. Careless, negligent. I'm not going to go into all of it, but I was scared for them. And God assured me that night at that altar that He's got this. He needs me to work for Him. And He needs me to understand that He's going to take care of those boys. The man that stood up from that altar is a totally different man than who kneeled at it. And that was 9 years after my ordination. 9? Let me do the math again. Yeah. 2005 I was ordained. 2014 is when I lost my family. I completely surrendered that night. Not a bullshit surrender like I did years previously. It wasn't just lip service. That night, I truly began to serve. And I continue to this day. And there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that will stop me or even slow me down. Why? Faith of a mustard seed. I have seen far too much. I have seen my ass get saved in countless ways, countless times, since 2014 when that happened. It's crazy the stuff I watch before me. And it's crazy what I see happens to those that work against me. It's a weird testimony. I'm a weird guy. And I will promise you on my children's lives that every word I just said to you was true. Speak to God, not man. Man is going by a book that has been so far altered and changed, and the end of it isn't even close to the truth. You can thank the Council of Nicaea for that. You can thank the tribe of Judah for that. And you can thank the Romans for that. Which, by the way, are the Catholics. Just don't let them know. They're not even Catholics or Roman. They're pagan, but different discussion for a different time. Anyway, that's my testimony. Take it, leave it, learn from it, don't learn from it. Choice is yours. And it truly is. Make it wisely, because it's a bitch when you don't. Shalom.